Jason Garrett, Football Night in America studio analyst, former head coach in the NFL, joining us. I watched the pregame, and you were pretty confident where you thought Seattle was going to win by double digits. Why were you so confident?
I just thought they were so much better, when you watch the film of them all year long. There's something about the gauntlet that they went through in the NFC West that was interesting to me. You play San Francisco three times, you play the Rams three times. They win 14 games in the regular season. They're impressive in the playoffs. The defense is dominant. Sam was clean throughout the playoffs. And I don't want this to come out the wrong way because it is hard to win a game, let alone win 14 games. But New England's road all year long was not nearly as challenging. Buffalo was the only team they played with a winning record. And I just feel like at the end of it, they went through the gauntlet. They were more impressive. And I just think top to bottom, they were a better team.
Help me understand, knowing what Seattle's doing, your left tackle is drowning, and it doesn't seem like you're changing your offensive philosophy at all. Why?
I was surprised, New England's approach. The challenges were going to be up front. We said it before the game that I just don't know if New England's offensive line can block Seattle's front. And they couldn't block them when it was a four-man line, and they didn't handle the pressures very well at all. And what was interesting was they were not challenging pressures. It was a single DB coming, Witherspoon. It was strong dog, meaning a Mike and nickel Sam coming. These aren't complicated pressures, and it just didn't seem like New England had any answer for it. And for me, you go into the game and you say, okay, let's try to do this, and then it's not working. I was just surprised they didn't try something different. Hey, getting empty, get the ball out of his hand quickly. That's something they've done. Certainly chipping those guys and changing up your protections is something you could get to. And Josh McDaniels is as good as they get. I mean, trust me, he's in his 10th Super Bowl. But as that game wore on, I was surprised they just didn't try something different to alleviate it. And I was also really surprised they couldn't handle what appeared to be pretty basic pressures. They looked a little bit lost out there.
Yeah, I'm surprised. And of course, you have forgotten more football than I know. And I'm going, can't we just bring some help over there? If you're going to go back to pass, then have the opportunity to pass. I don't know what's going to happen after you throw it, but at least give him the opportunity to be able to throw the football. And I really thought they would subscribe to the Tom Brady playbook where it's just out of his hands quickly. And therefore, you neutralize that. And then maybe you get, 5, 7, 10 yards. You keep some drives alive. I thought they abandoned the run way too early. And if I'm noticing this and I'm a novice, I mean, Seattle's probably going, I don't think they're going to change anything. Let's just keep doing what we're doing.
Yeah, the number one thing when you're putting these plans together, and again, Josh knows this better than anybody, it's what's your protection plan? Okay, that's every week. But then particularly when you're talking about their offensive line going against that Seattle front, and you said it, what are the answers? Let's get it out quickly. Part of what New England's DNA has been for 25 years is let's use empty and let's get the ball out of his hand. 5 protectors, but we're going to give you quick answers. Boom, figure it out, throw it to the best matchup, and let's see if we can move it that way. The other thing to do is you start bringing people in. You have a tight end, you have a back, you chip and hammer on the issue. For them, it was particularly the left-hand side, rushing on Campbell. But you do those things by bringing extra people in. You have 7 protectors, 8 protectors, in some cases 9 protectors, where you're loading it up that way. And it just didn't seem like they did a lot of that. And you said it, the best way to alleviate the pass rush is you run at them. You make them be run defenders first. And they weren't able to do that either. But, let's give Seattle credit. They've been really, really good all year long. And you say, okay, let's run it. They're the 3rd best run defense in the league. They cover really well on the back end. They pressure you. It was going to be a challenge. And that's why we said that going in. Seattle is better. But again, I'm not so sure New England did enough to adjust and give their quarterback and their team enough chances in that game. And we saw it. We saw it throughout the game.
Jason Garrett from Football Night in America. Would you rather have a good quarterback for $35 million or a great quarterback for $55 million?
Great for 55.
Oh, not even close.
Yeah, great for 55. Those guys make such a difference. Why did the Rams have a real good opportunity to beat Seattle?
Because they paid Matthew Stafford.
He's just an elite player. I mean, this is a rare football player. And so all those things we're talking about, getting the ball out of your hand quickly, handling the pressures, identifying the looks. I mean, this guy does it in his sleep, and then he can throw the ball like it's nothing. So go back in the history of football. There's been 60 Super Bowls now. Look at all the Super Bowl winning teams. Typically, they have a great quarterback. Look at all the dynasties in the history of the NFL. It's great head coach. Oh, by the way, elite quarterback who's in the Hall of Fame. So to me, it's a no-brainer. If you got one, you pay him. The worst thing is you're paying $55 million for a guy who's not elite. That's where you run into issues.
Any names you want to name?
No, none at all. but you get to that point where you say he's our guy, and oh hell, we got to pay him. That's where you make the mistake. You got to believe deep down that this is an elite player who's going to make a difference for your team.
But why do these teams? I never would have extended Kyler. I never would have extended Tua. These are all things I said in real time. C.J. Stroud, I'm not extending him. I mean, I'm going to make him prove that he is an elite quarterback here. We just jump early. Why?
No doubt. You start to feel this pressure, from the outside. Oh, you got a guy, or he flashed for you. And you really got to be in your building, and you have to evaluate it. And you have to evaluate it hard and say, okay, is this guy really the guy we want for the next 10 years leading our franchise? And just because they haven't done it yet doesn't necessarily mean you say no to that. A lot of people say, oh, he hasn't done it, he hasn't won yet. Well, okay, you have to pull back and independent of those results say, is this our guy? Has he demonstrated the intangible qualities? Great leader, tough, all of that. Does he have the physical ability to make a difference? The great Ron Wolf line on Brett Favre, does he tilt the field? If you're going to pay a guy $55 million, he better be a difference maker. He better represent everything you want in your organization. And I agree with you. I think they jumped the gun too much on these decisions.
Yeah, and you start to look at the offseason here. Is Pittsburgh going to bring back Aaron Rodgers? Would you bring back Aaron Rodgers if you were coaching the Steelers?
Well, if I were Mike McCarthy, I think I'd be better inclined to answer that question. He was with him for so long, as we all know. So I think that adds a little bit of a wrinkle to it. I thought Aaron did a great job, helping that team get to where they were. But again, when you're bringing in a new coach and it's a new regime, okay, do we want to start over? Maybe it's Aaron Rodgers for a year, but you draft a quarterback high and say, okay, we're going to do this Patrick Mahomes thing. Like Alex Smith was going to keep the seat warm for our quarterback who's coming in the future. Maybe it's that decision, but I don't say automatically we're kicking him to the curb. He's been too good throughout his career. He was too good this year, and then the connection with McCarthy is an interesting wrinkle to it. But you have to have a plan going forward.
But I look at Miami. I don't know what their plan is. Is it Quinn Ewers until they maybe find their quarterback? Is Bryce Young? Is he a big time? Let's extend him quarterback in Carolina. Minnesota, that seems to be a mess. Pittsburgh, big question mark there. Arizona, big question mark there. I mean, there's a lot of things that need to be answered here. I don't know if they will be, but that's just a handful of teams.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. And like I said, the only thing worse than not having a quarterback is having the wrong one that you're paying a lot of money to. So it's probably better to take a breath on some of these decisions and let them prove it to you. If they come back and prove it to you again, okay, the evidence is there. But I do think you have to be careful, because the obvious question and the reason you asked me in the beginning is, if it's 55 or 35, what are you doing with that $20 million? And are you able to build a defense like Seattle built? Because you put your resources over there. You need to put your quarterback in an environment where he can have success. So if he's taking all the money and you're not paying linemen or playmakers or defensive players, it's going to be harder for him to have success. So you better believe in the guy.
We got Drew Brees coming up next hour.
I'd pay him.
Well, you can't pay him now because that arm is gone. But I know you crossed paths with him. You spent a lot of time with Drew Brees at certain points, didn't you?
Yeah, we did. Football history could have been different if Drew Brees came to Miami when I was coaching down there. But things all work out the way they do. But
how close was that he was going to play for Saban?
Oh, I think it was really close. We went to New Orleans on Wayne Huizenga's plane, and he and his wife came back with us. We had an amazing dinner. It's easy to say now, but we were in on Drew Brees, obviously, and ultimately it came down to a medical decision where they said he had a 75% tear of his rotator cuff, and he wanted X number of dollars guaranteed. And I'll never forget. We're not going to do that. And
who's the one that said that?
Not the same.
Who said that?
Say it again.
Who said we're not going to do that?
Our coach was the guy who ultimately said that.
Okay, so Saban said we're not going to give him what he wants.
Well, I just think it was a bigger decision. He probably discussed it with the doctors and with ownership and where he was physically and all of that. And my contention all along is I get it, I certainly understand it, but I bet on certain guys coming back from injuries more than others. And even though it was a severe injury to Drew, the fact that it's Drew Brees makes you think, this is the kind of guy who's going to do absolutely everything possible to get himself right. And sure enough, he only threw for 60,000 yards after we had those discussions.
62,000 to be exact.
Yeah, I bet.
But you guys took Dante Culpepper. Wasn't he a medical risk as well?
He was. And that was the tricky part of it. And it's a little bit to our discussion that we're having right now about quarterbacks. Just because we weren't able to do the one thing didn't mean we necessarily had to do the other thing. And Dante was an amazing player, but such a big part of his game was his movement. He threw 39 touchdown passes 2 years before that, but so many of them were him knocking guys away, running extended plays, rocking the ball down the field. And he had a severe knee injury, and he was not able to move like he was earlier in his career, and he just wasn't the same player. And so, in that situation, you say, okay, we can't have Brees. Do we necessarily have to do this? Maybe it's better to keep the slate clean for now and then go make the best decision going forward. And we chose not to do that.
You had a great season. I enjoyed the Super Bowl coverage as well. Thank you, as always, for your contributions.
You're the best. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you, buddy. Jason Garrett, Football Night in America, and former Cowboys head coach.